Letter the First of Life in Mexico. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Life in Mexico by Francis Calderon de la Barca. Letter the First. Departure of the Norma. Last look of New York Bay. Fellow passengers. Contrary winds. Deceitful appearances. Sunset in southern latitudes. Seas passed over by Columbus. Varied occupations on shipboard. Berry Islands. Bahama Banks. Evening in a tropical sea. L.E.L. Pan of Matanzas. Morro Castle. Bay of Havana. Arrival. Handsome house in Havana. Sights and sounds. Packet ship Norma, October 27th, 1839. This morning at 10 o'clock we stepped on board the steamboat Hercules, destined to convey us to our packet with its musical name. The day was foggy and gloomy, as if refusing to be comforted, even by an occasional smile from the sun. All prognosticated that the Norma would not sail today, but where there's a will, etc. Several of our friends accompanied us to the wharf, the Russian Minister, the Minister of Buenos Aires, Mr. , who tried hard to look sentimental, and even brought tears into his eyes by some curious process, Judge , Mr. , and others from whom we were truly sorry to part. The Norma was anchored at one of the most beautiful points of the bay, and the steamboat towed us 5 miles until we had passed the Narrows. The wind was contrary, but the day began to clear up, and the sun to scatter the watery clouds. Still there is nothing so sad as a retreating view. It is as if time were visibly in motion, and as here we had to part from , we could only distinguish, as through a misty veil, the beauties of the bay, the shores covered to the water's edge with trees rich in their autumnal colouring, the white houses on Staten Island, the whole gradually growing fainter, till, like a dream, they faded away. The pilot has left us, breaking our last link with the land. We still see the mountains of Neversink and the lighthouse of Sandy Hook. The sun is setting, and in a few minutes we must take our leave, probably for years, of places long familiar to us. Our fellow passengers do not appear very remarkable. There is Madame A., returning from being prima donna in Mexico, in a packet called after the opera in which she was there a favorite, with her husband Señor V. and her child. There is M. B., with moustaches like a bird's nest, a pretty widow in deep affliction, at least in deep mourning, a maiden lady going out as a governess, and every variety of Spaniard and Habanero. So now we are alone, C. and I, and my French femme de chambre, with her air of dowager duchess, and moreover seasick. 28th. When I said I liked a sea life, I did not mean to be understood as liking a merchant ship, with an airless cabin, and with every variety of disagreeable odour. As a Frenchwoman on board, with the air of an afflicted porpoise, and with more truth than elegance, expresses it, tout devant point me malheur de Cologne. The wind is still contrary, and the Norma, beating up and down, makes but little way. We have gone 74 miles, and of these advanced but 40. Every one being seasick today, the deck is nearly deserted. The most interesting object I have discovered on board is a pretty little deaf and dumb girl, very lively and with an intelligent face, who has been teaching me to speak on my fingers. The infant heir of the house of has shown his good taste by passing the day in squalling. Mr. B., pale, dirty, and much resembling a brigand out of employ, has traversed the deck with uneasy footsteps, and a cigar appearing from out his moustaches, like a light in a tangled forest, or a jack-o'-lantern in a marshy thicket. A fat Spaniard has been discoursing upon the glories of olla podrida. Out west we are slowly pursuing our way, and at this rate might reach Cuba in 3 months. And the stars are shining, quiet and silvery. All without is soft and beautiful, and no doubt the Norma herself looks all in unison with the scene, balancing herself like a lazy swan, white and graciously. So it is without, and within. There is miserable seasickness, bilge water, and all the unavoidable disagreeables of a small packet. 31st. 3 days have passed without anything worthy of notice having occurred, except that we already feel the difference of temperature. The passengers are still enduring seasickness in all its phases. This morning opened with an angry dispute between two of the gentlemen on the subject of Cuban lotteries, and they ended up applying to each other epithets which, however much they might be deserved, were certainly rather strong. But by dinner time they were amicably engaged in concocting together an enormous tureen of gazpachos, a sort of salad composed of bread, oil, vinegar, sliced onion, and garlic; and the fattest one declares that in warm weather a dish of gazpachos with plenty of garlic in it makes him feel as fresh as a rose. He must indeed be a perfect bouquet. The opening of morning is dramatic in our narrow cabin. About 20 voices in Spanish, German, Italian, and broken English strike up by degrees. From a neighbouring stateroom, Lindoso puts forth his head. "Steward, atumlar, there is no water." "Come in, sir, come in." "Caramba, steward!" "Come in, sir, come in." "Steward, Wasser und Öl." "Here, sir." "Amigo, how is the wind?" This is the waking up of el Señor Ministro, putting his head half suffocated out of his berth. "Oh, steward, steward!" "Yes, miss." "Come here and look at this." "I'll fix it, miss," etc. 1st of November. A fair wind after a stifling night, and strong hopes of seeing the Bahama Banks on Sunday. Most people are now gradually ascending from the lower regions, and dragging themselves on deck with pale and dejected countenances. Madame A has such a sweet toned voice in speaking, especially in her accents of her Bella Italia, that it is refreshing to listen to her. I have passed all day in reading, after a desultory fashion, Les Infantes d'Ouard, by Casimir Delavigne, Washington Irving, Disraeli's Curiosities of Literature, etc., and it is rather singular that while there is a very tolerable supply of English and French books here, I see but one or two odd volumes in Spanish, although these packets are constantly filled with people of that nation going and coming. Is it that they do not care for reading, or that less attention is paid to them than to the French or American passengers? One would think Cervantes, Lope de Vega, Calderon, or Moratin better worth buying than many commonplace novels which I find here. 3rd. Yesterday the wind blew soft as on a summer morning. A land bird flew into the ship. Today the wind has veered round, but the weather continues charming. The sea is covered with multitudes of small flying fish. An infantile waterspout appeared and died in its birth. Mr. , the consul, has been giving me an account of the agreeable society in the Sandwich Islands. A magnificent sunset, the sight of which compensates for all the inconveniences of the voyage. The sky was covered with black clouds lined with silver, and surrounded by every variety of colour, deep blue, fleecy, rose, violet, and orange. The heavens are now thickly studded with stars, numbers shooting across the blue expanse like messengers of light, glancing and disappearing as if extinguished. It is well to read the history of Columbus at sea, but especially in these waters, where he wandered in suspense, high-wrought expectation, and firm faith, and to watch the signs which the noble mariner observed in these latitudes, the soft serenity of the breezes, the clear blue of the heavens, the brilliancy and number of the stars, the seaweeds of the Gulf, which always drift in the direction of the wind, the little land birds that come like harbingers of good tidings, the frequency of the shooting stars, and the multitude of flying fish. As the shades of evening